Good morning and welcome to the October 7th Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority Board meeting. Call the meeting to order, and the first item are items from the chairman, and we have a presentation for onboard and non-rider survey results from ETC Institute, Chris Tatham. And this is Chris, and he's going to give us our report.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I was just here, 4 weeks ago for the city's survey presentation, so it's great to be back. For those of you who aren't familiar with our firm, let me see if I can get this to advance. Well, I may just point you there. Our firm specializes in doing research for local governments. This is just a map of where we've done community surveys over the last decade. What you may not know as much is our firm's actually also the leader now in transit onboard surveys. We've actually done 35 surveys for organizations in 27 states. We're currently doing 13 of them. So when it comes to understanding transit information, that's another area that we're now becoming the national leader in. So as far as, that went the wrong way. There we go. Today's presentation, I just want to share with you the results of a couple surveys that we did. One was a non-rider survey, which really asked people in the community who aren't using transit a number of questions. The other was to get feedback from folks who actually use Embark services. So as far as the non-rider survey is concerned, it was really to give an assessment for what do people in the community think about the importance of transit service, measure their awareness of Embark, and just really the effectiveness of some of your educational campaigns so that people know the new brand. And then, frankly, to find out whether people who aren't using it would use it. Is there a cultural thing in Oklahoma City where people just don't ever use transit? Or are there things that could be done to actually encourage folks to begin using it? So that was the main purpose. The survey was actually conducted last spring. We interviewed a little over 800 residents that gave us results that have a precision of about plus or minus 3.5% at the 95% level of confidence. And in layman's terms, that means if we did the same survey 100 times, 95 times out of 100, we get the same results within about 4% or less. So it's a very accurate survey and gives us a good indication of what the average person who's not using transit in the Oklahoma City area thinks. As far as some of the findings, the first one is that the community generally thinks that transit is a high priority. And this first slide actually isn't from your survey. It's actually from the city survey I delivered a few weeks ago. You'll see of the top services that were assessed, transit was the fourth most important. The streets were clearly number one, but you'll see it made the top. It made the top four. When we did some analysis of that, and we looked at the overall quality of services that are currently provided, in our analysis, public transit actually was identified as the third highest overall priority based on the important satisfaction analysis. So clearly streets is at the top of the list. That kind of dominated my presentation a few weeks ago, but transit is considered to be a very high priority by the general public. In addition, from your survey, when we just asked folks how important they thought it was to invest in public transit in the future, you'll see that 78% of non-riders actually think it's important. And you can see that combine the extremely important, 1 out of 3 people consider it a passionate. So even though very few people are riding it, in fact, none of these people are active riders, 1 in 3 thought it was extremely important for you to invest in the future of transit in the area. We then gave them a number of types of transportation investments that could be made. And what I found very interesting is that adding bus service, particularly for elderly and disabled folks, was the #1 priority among a number of things that were assessed. General bus service, you can see, was a little bit below, but more sidewalks and trails for bikes, as well as widening roads and highways. Those are typically things that we would expect, but the service for elderly and disabled rate very high. And you'll see that only 10% thought it was a low priority. The other thing that was encouraging from this survey defined was just how well you've branded Embark in the community so quickly. Oftentimes it can take many years for folks to actually realize that a name of an organization or a name of a service has changed. When we asked people just to outright name what the public transit system was called, 51% were able just to rattle it right off their, say that's what it was. A lot of folks just weren't sure. And again, these are non-riders. Some still thought it was Cotpa, but all in all, Embark's awareness is very high. When we then followed it up, And we did a further thing as whether or not they'd actually heard of Embark. If they didn't initially mention it, 2 out of 3 people said they had. So you've done a really good job in a very quick and short amount of time of educating people about Embark services. And one of the main reasons you've been able to do that is through your bus stops in your neighborhoods. We actually asked people how they'd heard about the name, and you can see the bus stops in neighborhoods was the #1 source of information that people learned about the service. In addition, we found that although that the level of awareness is high, the level of familiarity with services is low. And we know that that's one of the big barriers to usage. So even though you've done a good job kind of branding Embark, there's still opportunities to do more education. You'll see only 8% of people who are very familiar, of the people who aren't currently using it, were very familiar. And we also find that that's one of the challenges. We've done some work in the Kansas City area with Johnson County Transit and the KCATA, and we find that people will live by a bus stop and they drive by it every day, and they're like, one day I might take that to work, but they don't know how to do it. And so they just don't ever figure it out because it takes some time. So the education piece is one of the big barriers to getting non-riders to begin using the service. In addition, when we ask people whether or not they'd actually consider riding the commuters using bus to go to work or school, 55% actually said they would under the right conditions. And that might seem unusual. Why aren't more people using it? Well, the conditions and expectations of the service aren't being met. And that's going to always be a challenge in a community where there's a lot of low-density development and people have lots of access to cars. But it's not that people are against riding transit. It's just that they require a high level of service to beat the alternatives of driving and parking. When we also asked them about the characteristics of service that were most important, you'll see that on-time performance, frequency of service, and interestingly, availability of information were the top 3. And so again, the need to raise awareness so that people know how to use the service is actually one of the things that people thought was important in their decision to actually potentially use it in the future. So that's kind of the highlights. Lots more information I won't bore you with today, but wanted to give you a kind of an overview of what we learned from non-riders. The other one is the survey we did of riders, and the purpose of it was to really better understand who's using your system, how they're using it, identify opportunities for improvement. And frankly, we did a previous survey back in 2011, or at least you did, and we wanted to show some of the trends since that last survey. So this survey was actually conducted last November. We're getting ready to redo it here in a few weeks. The goal was to get about 1,000 usable surveys. We actually got over 1,200, and so the results for this survey are also very accurate like they are with the non-resident survey. And the first thing that we found here is that there's many new riders. And the reason this is important is it's kind of like if you're a company and you have customers, if you can retain your existing customers, it's a lot easier to do that than to attract new customers. And you'll notice that with some of the service changes compared to 2011, you actually have almost twice as many people who are using it for the first time. And so there are some definitely opportunities to how you interact with those folks and what kind of opportunities they see, and the benefits of using transit could cause them to use the service more and more. So that's one of the things, even as a strategy, is how do you go after that 15%, and once their car gets fixed, or they get a new job, how do you get them to say, you know what, using transit's still a viable alternative, not just using it as an emergency. In addition, I think it's important that you recognize that transit riders are employed, and that the service makes a big impact on the local economy. We actually asked the current users, and you'll see that 50% of them were either employed full or part-time. Another 17% of them are looking for work, so 2 out of 3 of your users are part of the workforce. And so it's not just a social service, it's actually a service that's getting people to and from jobs each and every day. And when you look at some of the trends from the last survey, you'll see that work continues to be the #1 purpose, but the system is actually being used more than ever for people to also do shopping and errands. And so it's not just getting people to and from work, they're finding other ways to do things which are also having a positive impact on the economy. As far as what the typical rider looks like, one of the things we're able to do with the data is actually say, well, here's what your typical customer looks like. And I actually did it for both a new rider and also people of using the system for a long period of time. And you'll see your new riders tend to be males, employed. They're using the service to get to and from work. they have slightly more vehicles than those longer-term riders. You can see almost 1 vehicle per household for your new riders, less than half a vehicle per household for your long-term riders. They probably have a driver's license, at least about a majority of them do. If you're a long-term rider, you don't have a driver's license. You'll see your newer riders are younger, about 10 years on average younger than people who have been using the service for more than 2 years. Slightly larger households, more likely to vote, more likely to earn more money, less likely to have a disability, but they both tend to be African American and high school graduates. And so what's interesting when you look at this is this isn't people who didn't graduate from high school. These are people who are working, they have jobs, and your newer riders tend to be more family-oriented from larger households, tend to make a little bit more money. So if you can retain them, that may be an effective way to grow ridership in the future. One of the things that we did look at in the survey is how satisfied your customers currently are, and these ratings are extremely good. One of the things I typically look for in assessing satisfaction is the percentage of folks who are giving you an excellent or like a most intense positive rating. And you'll see in just about every area that was assessed, about a quarter or more of your customers gave you a 5 or that high level of excellent on the 5-point scale, and very, very few were dissatisfied or gave negative ratings of below average or poor. You'll notice that the one area that has the most negativity has to do with information at bus stops, with about 1 in 6 folks. So again, making it so that people know what to do, how to use the system, how to get around, that'll definitely be something to look for in the future. One of the other challenges for your system is by nature with your transit center, you have a lot of transfers. But you'll notice that almost half of your riders are taking 2 or more transfers, and that's a real challenge. And one of the things I notice is that's probably one of the reasons you're not able to retain riders over time, because we actually looked at the difference between people who are new riders, riding less than 6 months versus those who've been riding more than 2 years. And you'll notice that among those who are relatively new to the system, 27% of those who had 0 transfers had used Embark for less than 6 months, compared to just 13% of those with 3 or more transfers. So at the end of the day, that difficulty of making the trip is causing people to probably go back to looking for driving and other methods. So to the extent that that can be minimized, the transfers, that will probably improve your ability to retain customers who enter the system. In addition, we looked at some ways to improve the service, and we assessed a lot of characteristics. And one of the things we did here is like we do with the community survey is we looked at your performance, which is shown on the vertical scale, kind of from the bottom to top, and then the stated importance of each of these service characteristics. So what you look at is everything to the right-hand side. Those are the characteristics that were most important to your current riders. Things on the left were less important. And as you go from the bottom of top, those at the bottom were the areas that were rated lower or had lower satisfaction. And the things to focus on tend to be those in the bottom right. And you'll see 3 areas, at least for your choice riders, as having buses arrive on time, frequency of service, and information at bus stops were identified as 3 of the things that you should probably focus on to improve your ability to serve the needs of choice riders. We did the same thing for those who were identified as transit-dependent riders, those who typically don't have driver's license and low incomes and don't have access to cars. And you'll see that safety while waiting for buses, the frequency of service, and also the ease of locating the stops were the 3 things that were most important to that group. In addition, we gave them a list of things that they could take a look at, and you'll see the top 3 things that improvements that respondents wanted to see were more routes to more places or expanded coverage of service, and more buses running later, and also more shelters at stops were picked, all of those by about 1/5 or more of those who responded to the survey. Last thing I'll share with you here is just some findings regarding the impact of your sidewalk and benches and shelters. We took a look to see whether or not these are really making much of a difference. And what we found in the analysis is that these additions don't significantly enhance the overall positives, but they greatly reduce the negatives. And what you see here, for example, is people who got on at a stop that didn't have any of the amenities. You'll see that 12.2% of them were dissatisfied or gave negative ratings for Embark services. People who had all 3 amenities, it was only 4.4% gave negative ratings. However, you'll see that the overall positives didn't change that much. And we also found that if you only do sidewalks and don't do everything, you don't get as much of bang for your buck. It's almost like people's expectations are for you to do everything, not just one or the other. So that's, in other words, they'll see one attribute and they'll think, well, why didn't they do these other pieces here as well? The result of that is rising expectations that's likely to occur. So just to summarize, I know this is a lot to give you this morning in a short period of time, but you should be really proud of the fact that you've done a great job in a short period of time of raising awareness about who Embark is, what the organization is, and your brand recognition has come a long way in a very quick and short period of time. Second, the general public, non-riders, thinks that transit service is very important, and a third actually thinks it's extremely important to make future investments for transit, even though they don't use the service. We see overall satisfaction ratings being very high, but there's a need for continued information, which was the lowest area of the service characteristics that were assessed. And frankly, under the right conditions with the right service, you may be able to increase transit ridership, and I think one of the best places to start would be with the current riders, those who are riding 6 months or less, figuring out how to retain them, and that may help you see ridership over time grow. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions, but I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Are there any questions from the trustees?
I'd like to make sure, first, thank you so much for your presentation. As someone who's taught English composition at the college level for the last 7 years, I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate your research. Research. And your polling methodology, I really appreciate that. I don't think that's something that anyone watching this right now should discount. So I really want to take time to pause on that, so thank you. And also to ask that every board member be able to have a copy of this. Is that something that we could do?
Yes, the presentation we can make available electronically. We'll provide a copy of the presentation and the full survey as well.
Thank you, and thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. This is really great. One of my questions is, are we planning to share this with the council?
At the discretion of the trust, we certainly can.
I mean, I think it'd be a good thing for them to have that information to share with them, because I think it shows the progress that we've made, but also, you know, some of the strategic areas that we could target to help make improvements. So it's really helpful. It's really good. Thanks.
My question is, when are we doing this again? The survey was done November?
No, spring.
Well, part of it was spring, part of it
We're actually getting ready to do the onboard piece again here in the next, about the next few weeks, actually.
Our plans, permanent plans, are to do the non-rider survey every other year, and then we'll do the customer rider survey each year, which, as Chris mentioned, we're beginning to conduct shortly.
I just had one observation. The very lowest thing that was important to anybody was park and ride lots, noticed on the survey.
I'm sorry?
I said the very lowest of importance seemed to be park and ride lots.
And that's because they're only used by a small percentage of people. So for the people who use them, they're very important, but the majority of your riders aren't using park and ride services. So that's why it rated.
But if we're looking at people that have cars, choice riders, the importance of park and ride lots would be very important.
You would think that, but at the end of the day, it's even how people would potentially use the service. And so it's the service frequency, the coverage of the service, things like that. Before you consider the park and ride lot, just having the lot itself doesn't get you to ride it. It's getting into the system and making sure a lot of other attributes. So park and ride, the importance of those lots rises to people as the coverage of the service, as the reliability of the service, the frequency of the service goes up, because then I say, hey, I want to use that service. But just doing a park and ride service lot without all of those other components tends to make the park and ride less.
It's the chicken and the egg.
Exactly, right. You just put in a park and ride lot, that doesn't get people to use it. It's got to have those other attributes first, and then people will use the park and ride lots.
Thank you.
My greatest takeaway of this was the fact that the majority of people transfer one or more times, and to me that means it's not as efficient as what it could be if we had more service out there. So.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Barney. And I made some other notes here. And again, just going back to the research, because after Embark and Cotpa in our city won this recent national award. As I've posted on social media about it, I've received, many compliments on our behalf and on behalf of the city, of course, and we're all very excited about it. I couldn't help but notice, though, on social media, there'd be a couple times where someone would be like, well, really? Well, why? And then as they looked at the research we'd already did, when I showed them, here's why, here are the new amenities that we've added to our existing service, and then showed that ridership had increased by 8.8% because of those new amenities for the very demographic, the very person that we're talking about who's taking our transportation system, then it clicked. Oh, okay. And that really stood out to me today because one of the notes I saw in here was that 60% of people who are non-riders have low familiarity with our services. So it's not that we're not providing some of those services, it's that the education still needs, we have an opportunity there. I also think it's interesting that most people get information about Embark and know about our brand from the bus stops, and simultaneously that's one of the lowest scores that we have, that we need more information at the bus stop. So that's something I think we're going to have to think about going forward. And then, it's something I've heard people on the board talk about all the time, and I think this is something we're going to have to really think about as we go into next year's general obligation bond, all the council people. That's why I think we do need to present these demographics in your research to them, because sidewalks, benches, and bus shelters, those need to be priorities for our city, kind of building on what Kay was saying with the park and ride stuff. Well, that's not going to matter as much unless we have improved frequency, better bus routes, because we saw now from the research that that's what people are talking about, and I can tell you anecdotally that's what I hear, but I love that research is backing up that anecdotal conversations that I'm hearing. And we really do need to be talking about how we work with all the other boards and departments for sidewalks, benches, and bus shelters, so we can be working together in that GEO bond next year. This excites me. I love having data, and again, I want to thank you for presenting it to us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have a retiree, and I understand Jesse Chambray is not here, but we have a resolution for him. Possibly we'll be able to give at some future time.
Right.
Okay. Moving on from items from the chairman to citizens to be heard. Are there any citizens to be heard? Bob Hammock, would you like to speak?
Good morning, Vice Chairman Sibner and other board trustee members. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning. I appeared before you 2 months ago, said that we would come back with an official resolution. You should have a copy of this for you. I'm going to read it just to make sure it's in the record. Please consider this correspondence as Oklahoma City Public Schools' official request that the Board of Trustees of the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority approve a new ride program for OKCPS students. Specifically, OKCPS requests that, beginning on January 3rd, 2017, all OKCPS freshmen and sophomores receive free ridership on city buses upon presentation of proper identification. And, beginning of the first day of OKCPS fall school year 2017, free ridership will be extended to all juniors and seniors upon presentation of proper identification. It's understood that some routes may be excluded from the program. Under this agreement, promotion of the new ride program will be achieved by utilizing OKCPS social media as well as our automated internal system. OKCPS will bear all promotional costs attendant to this new program. Thank you for your careful consideration of this idea. This is signed by Aurora Laura, the superintendent. Jason also asked me to make a brief comments about the comparison between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, which is, of course, currently doing this program. And I spoke with Blaine Young, who's the Chief of Information for the Tulsa School District, and I'd invite anybody to talk to him. I'm happy to provide his phone number. This guy is so excited about what they've been able to do in Tulsa. Actually, Mayor Bartlett was the one in Tulsa who was the catalyst for the program happening. He contacted Bill Cartwright, who's the CEO of the Tulsa Transit Authority, and said, this is the way to stimulate future ridership. We're watching your research a while ago. The 4% of student rides, we're going to definitely have an impact on that. And when you impact that category, I would submit to you, you'll also see an increase in those other categories as well, as young people begin to realize the importance and the convenience of utilizing our transit system. Oklahoma City and Tulsa, very similar. We have 9 high schools. Tulsa actually has 9 high schools, 2 alternative schools, and 1 charter school that currently participate in their program. Their program is for all 4 years of high school, by the way. When the program was started in August, they had an average of 1,500 rides per week. Now, a ride per week is just a student showing their ID. So it could be the same student 3 times a day or 4 times a day. We don't know that. But what's interesting, I took a look at the 1,500 rides per week. That's 850 round trips. If it was a kid who was using the bus system to go to school and back, 850 round trips divided by 5 days a week, that's 170 students at this time that actually use the program in Tulsa. What's interesting, and got Blaine very excited, they're adding about 100 students a week. And they've also have their IT department come up with a mobile app so that students can actually go to this mobile app and figure out what is the best routes to help them with their lives. And we're going to do the very same thing here in Oklahoma City. What's really interesting, and I'll leave you with this thought, and then be happy to field any questions. Blaine Young pointed out to me that here it is, October. They've had not one example of any disruptive behavior on the buses. And he had a very interesting theory as to why that is. When you're on a yellow bus, you're your cronies, your friends, and what are you going to do? You're young, you're going to act up and be disruptive. That's what kids do. When you're on a city bus, you're with adults. And when you ride a bus with adults, that has a chilling impact on the behavior, any potential disruptive behavior of those kids because they're with adults. And he thought that was why they had not one single example of any disruptive behavior. They also had no issues with overcrowding. And in our presentation, we also took pains to point out that if there was a route that was overcrowded, let us know, and we'll prohibit that route from the program. So I will be back next month looking for a vote. It's a very exciting opportunity for the students of Oklahoma City. I think it's also a very exciting opportunity to raise that 4% ridership that you showed in your survey. Any questions, please?
I had one question about the, do the students in Tulsa just show a student ID and not a bus transit system pass that is issued by the transit organization?
Vice Chairman Sipner, I'm tempted to call you Barney, but Vice Chairman Sipner, my understanding is that they simply show their student ID.
Okay.
And there's a way that
you know the answer to
transit
that?
people have a way of tracking that.
Yeah, we've had some conversations with Tulsa Transit. That's my understanding as well.
So they just show their
just
student
show their student ID.
School ID.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would you differentiate between freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors?
So we're
That on
starting
the
out with
ID?
freshmen and sophomores in January, then we'll expand it next fall. Next fall, of course, the guys who ride the sophomores will be juniors, and they'll know how to do it.
But as far as the ID goes, there's no,
They all have IDs.
but it doesn't say whether they're freshmen or seniors on the ID.
I don't know. I'll find that out for
I
you.
think for our program, they'd have a customized Embark ID, just like current students do, where we could identify what grade they're in.
So my question goes to, we approved a program, a year and a half ago for the school district to participate in $10 a month rides, but it's my understanding that that has not been implemented in the school district. And is there a reason for that?
Not that I know of. I think that program also, is that for elementary and middle schools, the $10?
It's for all junior high and high schools in the Oklahoma City public school system.
I don't have an answer for that.
I thought it was implemented at maybe the one Emerson.
Yeah, we do have, Emerson is one school that participates at fairly high levels in the program. We do have, some other participants, but nothing to the extent where we could say, other than Emerson, that, this school is really participating in the program.
Let me close by also saying my great appreciation for Jason. He's been extraordinary to work with and made this a real pleasure. Be back in a month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope that we can take this back to our Transportation Committee and study the options available to us.
We will. We'll set up
before we do bring it back.
Transportation Committee.
And it would be really great if Mr. Hammock could be at that meeting so that we can have a discussion about the program and possibly what kinds of parameters or
Okay.
structure we would put in place. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Are there any other citizens to be heard? If not, I seek approval for the minutes of the Cotpa board meeting of September 2nd, 2016. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Okay, on the consent docket, we have 3 items. Are there any that any of the trustees would like to have pulled? If not, is there a motion to receive the or approve the consent docket?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. Okay, moving to items for individual consideration. We have 2 items, F and G, that are in executive session. So is there a motion to move those 2 items to the heel of the docket? And it will take an individual vote. So first of all, is there a motion?
I move that these be moved to the end of the docket.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded, so we need individual votes on that. So, James?
Yes.
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 Okay. We will move on to item A, which is the adoption of a resolution authorizing the allocation of $35,000 for match in support of the 2010 Safe, Accountable, Flexible, Efficient Transportation Equity Act, a legacy for users, a grant application through the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. Jason?
Thank you, Chairman. This item here basically allows us as a transit agency provider to participate in a larger program that's being administered by the City of Oklahoma City. And the 2010 Safety Lou Grant Program really gives us the opportunity, I should say the city, the opportunity to leverage about $357,000 of grant funds in order to make improvements to bike lanes in the downtown area. A lot of those bike lanes are protected bike lanes, and with the emphasis, we've even talked about it this morning, but with the emphasis we've been placing recently on making better connections to our transit systems, whether it be sidewalks, whether it be accessibility improvements, whether it be improvements that can accommodate cyclists. As a transit agency, we want to support those connections to the bus system and to the other modes of transit. And so it's an opportunity to be able to participate in that project. Would require a Cotpa making a 10% match. The full match is 20%, with the remaining being made up by the city. So our match amount would be $35,000. Again, thinking about the potential for improving connections, we have Matt Sandage with the planning department who will show a diagram, or I should say a map of where some of these proposed bike lanes are going to be located. But suffice it to say, many of them are run either alongside of transit routes or they intersect with transit routes. And so we're certainly looking forward to that in the sense that it continues to support, our mission to make that first mile connection, as we know is always a pedestrian or a cyclist trip, to really make that first mile connection to transit easier and more accessible for our community. So with that, if Matt's here, Matt, do you want to take us through the map here and just give us a sense of maybe kind of what we've done to this point through the Public Works project and the Phase 1, and then what Phase 2 here will do?
Sure. Okay, so basically you'll want to focus in on the green lines on the map. The red and the green are probably the most important in this. And the red lines are what we're calling our Phase 1 demonstration corridors. It's another pot of money that we're using to construct those. The green lines are the Phase 2, which is this second grant which we are requesting the match for. And that builds off of the Phase 1. So these will basically radiate out from downtown, and we're trying to reach as many parts of the city as we can with the available funds. So we're getting south of the river. We're also wanting to reach east of 235 and then go as far north as we can on Chartel. So I also want to point out that this is a draft. There is some engineering that will take place before these are constructed, and so there may be some alterations to the routes once that's done. This grant is for the green lines. So this is Exchange, Westwood Avenue, 13th Street, and North Chartel. And then if for some reason one of those doesn't work out as far as the engineering goes, then we're going to look at the alternates, which those are the pink lines, or the purple, which includes 16th, 19th, Indiana.
But the blue and red are already funded.
Right. Blue and red are already funded.
Blue and red are already funded.
Can you give us an idea, so with the blue and red, or that, particularly that kind of loop around downtown, is that kind of being designed, or?
Yes, there are some preliminary designs on the blue and the red. Well, and some of the blue already exist. So on Walker Avenue, for example, that already exists. Sheridan, it already has bicycle lanes. We're wanting to improve the intersections on Sheridan, provide some left-hand turn accommodations for cyclists. The red Chartel line, that is going to be a protected bicycle lane. What that means is there will be vertical delineators or candlesticks that separate the bicycle lane from the vehicle lane. So that provides some additional safety. So the idea is that North Chartel would be protected as well. It could be all the way up to 50th. Yes. Also Exchange and potentially 13th. Where there is available right-of-way to do that, that's where we want to do it. By adding in a small buffer plus the vertical delineators, that takes up a little additional space. So we have to have the right-of-way to make that happen. But Chartel does have that. Exchange does have that. And so through the engineering studies that are going to take place as part of this grant, that will further evaluate and justify the use of the protected lands.
This is just a comment. This is, I think, a very important process to continue to pursue. Just my personal findings, I find that the closer I am to the core, the less problems I tend to have biking. People, I think, are more used to it. Where you encounter more problems is when the further you get away, further out into the suburbs, where the speed increases for automobiles. They're less used to seeing bicyclists, and I think the problems are greater out there. I'm just saying we need to go forward with this, but keep in mind there's problems further away from the core part that need to be addressed at some point.
Right. And what we are calling this is basically education through implementation. So as we build more bicycle lanes and protected bicycle lanes, maybe the protection isn't necessarily needed in the downtown core area as much, but it'll certainly educate the public how to use the facilities and get them more comfortable with cycling so that they can venture further out.
Yeah. No, I want to make clear, I'm very supportive of this, and I hope we vote to proceed with this. I just wanted to make the comment from a personal perspective. I think in some respects there's a greater danger the further away, more out into the suburbs where you have, again, the major arteries as far as transportation, the speeds pick up, drivers are less used to seeing bicyclists and tend not to be as accommodating. Compared with the closer you get to the core, people just, I think, react better. Personal comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I just would like to add to that. Yeah, I love what we're doing downtown. I think by modeling, this is what this should look like throughout the rest of the city. But to Councilman Greenwell's point, I don't even think we have to go out to the suburbs to really talk about biking getting a little bit more risky. Literally, that's why I love your exchange route. I think this is very smart to connect that southwest corridor, which is pretty heavily traveled and developing too. Just anecdotally, I hear a lot from my students and folk on the south side where I teach, even though I live on the north side. I hear often they say, oh, we're not maybe as so much a part of the renaissance that we're seeing on the north side and this downtown. So I love that one of the first priorities here is this route to Exchange and then down to Westwood. But I would say that area around Stockyards and Capitol Hill, and then when you go north where Chartel is going to 36th and through Paseo and all that, we also, as you all think about these bike lanes, and I've seen some of the plans for going out there, those aren't the suburbs, that's still the inner core of the city, and that needs help. I have a friend who lives in Edgemere Park, 36th and Robinson, and he bikes to Whole Foods where he works. That's treacherous. That is some treacherous biking right there. And so whatever we can be doing to have protected bike lanes, even along Western, we should be thinking about, and down through Chartel, connecting people to Chesapeake who live in Mesta Park and downtown, et cetera, et cetera. So I like what I'm seeing here. This is a good heart foundation. I'd like to see the artery stretch out too.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes. Okay, item number B, the approval for request for proposal for purchase of 40-foot CNG heavy-duty transit buses and authorize the administrator to advertise and release the RFP. Jason?
Yes, sir. Pleased to report that we are in a position now to order some new buses. As you know, one of the important things for us as a transit agency to do in order to continue to provide safe and reliable service not only to maintain our existing equipment, but definitely make sure that that equipment that exceeds its useful life is replaced in a timely manner. And we understand some of the challenges we've had with federal funding levels for bus and bus facilities replacement that were part of the MAP 21 legislation. But again, pleased to report that we are in a position using some previous grant funds in addition to a recent grant that we were awarded for $2 million for bus and bus facilities. We are in a position to purchase 18 replacement buses over the next 5 years. So where that puts us is with this RFP, we're going to ask for proposals for 18 buses with the option over the 5 years to purchase 20 additional buses. And just real quickly, the background in terms of how we got that number. As you'll recall, we have 11 buses in our fleet now that are past their useful life. So we'll be able to, and we have the funding in place to order buses to replace those. Then over the life of the contract, we expect additional buses to reach the end of their useful life based on current formula funding levels, assuming we do not get any additional awards from competitive grants or GEO bonds or any other source. We anticipate having funding for 7 more buses. So that puts us in a position where we're confident we can purchase 18. The options for 20 will allow us to go ahead and be able to purchase more buses as they exceed their useful life if that funding plan can be put together. And I think we've been pretty successful putting funding plans in place to meet our needs despite some of the reductions in federal funding. We anticipate to continue to look at that closely moving ahead over the next few years. So we feel like we're in a good position to do that. We're extremely fortunate to be awarded the 5339 competitive grant funds that are part of the new FAST Act. And so we'll be able to basically get caught up on our bus replacement plan with the issuance of this RFP. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
I'm psyched. Let's order some buses. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
That would be move approval of the items.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to item C, approval of the change order number 2 to the contract with Jim Cooley Construction for maintenance building improvements and service building improvements at South Main.
Yeah, this change order is a no-cost change order, but it does add time to the contract. As you'll recall, this project is actually kind of a group of many different projects out at the South May maintenance facility. Some of the things we're doing with this contract, we're installing a sprinkler system, we're repairing some concrete, we're replacing a wall on the north service lane building, also adding a paint booth and expanding the break and restroom area for service lane employees. So all of that is underway. We're getting very close. We are having to add some additional time. This change order actually adds 46 days to the original contract amount, and the delay is due primarily to waiting on materials, metal building components for that paint booth and that expansion of the service lane. So those materials have arrived. Construction is ongoing. The sprinkler system, in fact, has already passed the fire marshal inspection, and we expect to do final punch list on that hopefully within the next week. So the project is wrapping up. This change order will take the completion date out to October 15th. Realistically, based on where we're at right now, we're probably looking at the beginning of November before we finish the project.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the change order? Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on to item number D is the approval of the contract with JRC Property Management for the installation and repair of bus stop poles and signs.
Right, so as we learned in our survey results, how important our bus stops are to our system and to our community, to learn about our organization. And really, when you think about it, although it was pointed out that additional information is needed at those bus stop signs, we actually now have quite a bit of new information available to our customers when you think about the unique stop IDs that are now at each stop that allow customers to use the real-time text alerts, in addition to the route information signs where at each bus stop we also have signage that indicates which route serves that stop. So, of course, it's more important than ever to make sure that all 2,000 or so signs system-wide are kept up in a state of good repair. And we've been able to do that through contracting with vendors to help us make those repairs. As you'll recall, in September, we actually brought an item to the board ratifying the administrator's action to exceed the open market purchase of $25,000 for bus stop repair and maintenance while we were putting this, or I should say while we were completing this bid in an effort to garner a contract. And so we were able to advertise the bids on July 27th and August 3rd. We received the bids on August 23rd. We received 2 proposals. The proposal from JRC Property Management LLC was determined to be the lowest and best bid, and so we're recommending a contract award to JRC Property Management. It will be a 1-year award with 2 1-year renewals. Estimated cost to be about $85,000 annually for bus stop maintenance system-wide.
Okay, any questions or comments? Not. Is there a motion? Move approval of the contract. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Item E is a resolution authorizing the administrator to negotiate and enter into a contract with 49's Technology to establish a fare policy and evaluate fare structure.
Yes, as a growing multimodal transit agency, knowing that we'll have additional modes through the streetcar, even looking forward to a more robust regional model and how fares can integrate with other modes and other systems, one of the things we determined is we needed to take a look at our fare structure, make sure we have a adequate fare policy, and also part of that was requesting some assistance in developing or determining some of the most efficient ways to collect fares. And so, as you'll recall, on June 3rd, the board authorized an RFP for consultant services to assist with developing a fare policy. We actually advertised for bids on June 9th, June 21st, received bids on August 2nd. 4 proposals were received. The evaluation committee narrowed it down to 2 finalists. Interviews were conducted with those finalists last week, and the committee is recommending we begin negotiations with 49's Technology. So with approval of this item today, we'll be able to enter negotiations, and we'll bring a contract back for approval to the trustees at the conclusion of those negotiations.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the next 2 items are moved to the heel of the docket, so we're moving on into ratification of payroll and vendor claims. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Financial reports. Jason?
Yeah, so a few items to point out on the financial reports. If you could turn to page 2, this will be the financials, the budget to actuals for our transportation operations. And I would like to take a few minutes explaining some of the variances between budget to actuals, whether it be revenues or expenses. But keep in mind, this is expenditure and revenue data through 2 months of the fiscal year. So I don't see anything that we'll look at today necessarily indicative of a trend, but obviously items that we'll continue to monitor and report to the trustees. So looking at transportation operations, I did want to draw your attention to, under the operating revenue section, the fare box revenue and then the Embark Plus revenue. You'll notice on fare box, we're over target at about 108% of the budget, or $20,000 more than what we had projected. The Embark Plus revenue is actually $13,000 less than what we had projected, or about 43% of the budget. And the variance there is really due to a timing of reclassifying our revenue. All of our revenue is basically recorded in one account, and then it's allocated out to the different modes. And so the allocation of revenue to Embark Plus, although it was initiated in August, did not get finalized until September. So had that transaction occurred within the month of August, we'd actually be right on target for Embark Plus revenue, basically 0.88% of what we had projected. The other item on the revenues to point out is federal grants. You'll notice that looking at the original budget to date, we had projected to receive about $160,000 in reimbursements. Keeping in mind in July our projection was 0 because it is a reimbursement basis grant, and so we have to have the expenses before we can claim reimbursement. We actually ended up receiving a draw that we had processed for August, expecting to receive in September. We actually ended up receiving that in August, so that puts our actual revenues above what we had projected by about $338,000. So you look for that to balance and even out in September. Looking at the operating expenditures, we have some variances down there as well. We have a positive variance in the personal services in that we're about 88% of the budget. However, if we look at other services and fees and supplies, both of those categories, our expenditures are in excess of what our projected budget was through 2 months of the year. So I have a couple of things to mention to you, particularly with the other services and fees. One of the reasons we're seeing the variance there, and actually the primary reason, is the chargebacks that we pay to the city for support services such as workers' comp or legal services. All these support services are provided by the city. We actually had 2 months, both the August and September chargebacks recorded in August. So that's the most of the variance, and we expect that to level out and be back on track in our September financials. We're also paying a few of our software licensing renewals earlier in the year than what was projected. And then we did have some of the streetcar branding expenditures hit the financials in August that we hadn't necessarily projected. But again, nothing to be, I guess, concerned about it at this point. The variance is explainable, and we expect it to correct in September, on the September financials, I should say. The other one is, the other category is supplies. Again, we show to be $143,000 over on supplies. We'll just continue to monitor this. We do know we've been, kind of purchasing a few more parts than what we had projected. The other thing to keep in mind is that we usually try to keep our inventory pretty low at the end of a fiscal year and kind of restock at the beginning of the next fiscal year, and so we believe some of that restocking is driving this initial expenditure to be over budget and expect it to level out. Looking over on the next page, page 3, our parking budget to actuals. A couple comments here. Looking at our operating revenues, our monthly contract revenue, you'll notice, is $130,000 under budget, or about 87% of projection. And I would like to report that about $59,000 of that variance is due to the timing of a payment received for monthly parking. It's a payment we should have received and recorded in August. We actually did not receive it until September. So when you credit that back, that narrows that variance to about half of what's shown on the budget to actual. Looking at our operating expenditures, you'll notice we are considerably under budget on parking garage operations, and that's because we have not yet paid a monthly invoice for Republic Parking Services. As you'll know, we received the invoice in August, reviewed it, reviewed all the supporting documentation, and then that will pay in September. And then the other one is looking at the other service and fees category. You'll notice we're about $128,000 expenditures year to date, or about $44,000 over budget. And that's due primarily to some of the parking study work we've had done. We've been working with our vendor, Kimley Horn, on completing our parking study. I guess looking at page 4, on the river cruise operation, total operating expenditures, total operating revenues, well within budget. In fact, operating revenues are about 108% of what we had projected, and operating expenditures are about 94%. So we're in very good shape on the river, and similar story with the Spokies operation, where revenues are about 108% of what we had projected, or slightly over budget, and operating expenditures year to date are under at about 86% of what we had projected. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any other questions on the financials.
Any other questions for Jason on the financial report? If not, is there a motion to receive? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, moving on into our program reports. Kevin, do you want to give us the transportation and then streetcar report?
Mr. Vice Chairman, trustees, good morning. Thanks for having us. Before I start, I'd like to let you know that one of the deluxe buses that you purchased for us is waiting outside to meet you, and our customers are just going to love these buses. Wait till you get a load of these things. They are marvelous. Okay, I'd like to touch on 4 topics of the August 2016 monthly transit report: safety, ridership, on-time performance, and how we stack up to our yearly report card. We were responsible for 1 preventable accident during the month of August, which was our liability there is $3,300, and 4 low-dollar accidents, preventable accidents, with a total cost to us of $750. We experienced 8 non-preventable accidents during the month of August, and our 3-month rolling average is 2.0 preventable accidents per month. If you'll take a look at the ridership slide, you'll see that our ridership for August was 11,623, which is 1.5% below the 11,798 that we experienced last August. I can tell you that that's the 3rd decline in a row, and we're very concerned about that. We compared our ourselves to our 13 peers that we use as benchmarks, and for the latest numbers, which were April through June, and I can tell you that 2 of the 13 experienced increases. The others, and those 2 were Baton Rouge and Houston. The other 11 were down an average of 8.6%. Now, we're not hiding behind that, but what is happening to us is common in what we're doing. And we're not happy with that, and we're going to do everything we can to mitigate that. But our year-to-date decline is 3.7%, which is less than half of what is happening to our peers. New night service, I'm pleased to report, continues to climb. It's up 3%. That's from 382 passengers per night to 394. The bulk of that increase is from the new routes, the 5 and the 13, which we implemented this year. But the service continues to grow and is, in my mind, one of the major reasons that the public is pleased with our service. Our on-time performance. Our on-time performance is 66.84%, which is a 2% decrease from last August and a 1% decrease from July of this year. We're working diligently on that. We haven't yet received a benefit of the new bus stop policy, and we're working on a number of things. There are some institutional issues that we face, including detours and traffic, because we don't adjust ourselves for peak times with regards to our schedules, and also the railroad things that we run into. I'm not hiding behind that. We're going to improve it, but there are some institutional issues. We've also identified about 1.2%, which is the result of, or a decline, which is the result of our system inaccurately reporting when we arrive at the transit center. Everyone that arrives is marked early, and we're working on that little glitch, but that 1.2% is significant once we can capture it. Our year-to-date report card, number of passengers per service hour, we're at 92%. Number of passengers operating day, we're at 99%. Number of bus times, arrivals, and we're working on this, but it's 90%. Number of miles between road calls, 110%, which is good. Number of accidents per 100,000 miles we're at 129%, which is not good. And we are at 30% of the passenger claims per 100,000 service miles, which is good. Thanks for your time. Can I answer any questions with regards to the transit report?
Thanks for the report. I am curious, the other 9 cities that are seeing this almost 10% increase and 8% decrease. I'm sorry. Is there any discussion why? Is there any news we should be reading about this? Any thoughts?
Yeah, there are a number of cities have responded that the number one thing is that the price of fuel has decreased by 30% almost year over year, and that their ADA ridership is down from reduced funding, things like that. And frankly, in my mind, there's a kind of a general economic malaise that's going on in places other than the stock market. So that's what I'm hearing. The wonderful thing is that there are 13 of them, and they're spread from here to Tucson, and of course it includes Tulsa, 3 cities in Texas, up to Springfield, Missouri, St. Louis. We exclude things like, New York and Chicago, which aren't as similar. But everyone is experiencing it, and once again, we're not hiding behind it. And frankly, there are so many things that we can do that we're doing to improve the rider's experience, including this bus. Our riders are going to love these new buses, and we got 4 of them to look at. Thanks for asking.
Okay, any other questions about transit? We'll move on into the streetcar update.
Yeah, thanks. The streetcar update. Thanks, Mr. Vice Chairman. Let's see, the Evaluation and Selection Committee, there are 935 pages of material that is being evaluated. We're going to meet with proposers, or at least the Evaluation Committee is going to meet with proposers on the 18th of this month. We continue to prepare for the state safety oversight requirements. We met last month with the with ODOT, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, and the FTA, and the 3 of us are walking along in unison. It's wonderful, and I can tell you that all of us are learning about safety in the streetcar, which is quite an animal. We're going to have a safe streetcar. Let's see, the main line track and construction bids were released on August 31st. They are due next week on the 11th, which is a big deal. The rail procurement, I think that you all know the first 21 loads of girder rail are stashed here now. The next 21 are going to be here the week of the 24th. And then in March, the special track work will arrive March 2017. But that girder rail is very cool if you haven't seen it.
Any other questions for Kevin on the streetcar update?
Thanks a lot. I'll meet you at the bus. It's out there just waiting for us.
Okay. Well, and we'll do that after our executive session. So, okay. Jason, you've also asked Marilyn Dillon to come in and talk about the transit special services.
Yes, as part of the transit system report, we include a section on the transportation we provide for what we call the elderly and disabled transportation. And so Marilyn's here today to just kind of give us an update on some of the things we're doing in those areas.
Hi, good morning. My name's Marilyn Dillon. I'm the Special Services Administrator and also the ADA Coordinator. I'm really excited to be here. I know that you haven't heard a lot about special services. A lot of people don't even know what exactly that entails. The first thing that I wanted to do was introduce a couple of members of my staff. It's Becky Nolan and Valentina Van Kuren. They run and operate the day-to-day senior. And then also we have Cindy Brown. She is our partner with Area-Wide Aging Agency. So senior transportation has 5 basic services. We have the weekly grocery shopping routes, daily congregate meals. We also do non-emergency medical, and we have what we call a senior companion volunteer program. Now the senior companion, what that entails is we have trained senior volunteers that we go pick up at their house, and they go back to a homebound senior's house and help them with light housekeeping, prepping meals, things like that. And then finally, the last thing we have is the interim taxi rides. We use that funding if a senior has a medical or dental appointment that is outside our service area. And all of these services are provided through our partnership with the Area-Wide Aging Agency. So this is just some maps that Chip was kind enough to make for us. To kind of illustrate it, we have 4 weekly shopping routes. Now these routes run different days of the week so we can accommodate most seniors' schedules. We go and pick them up at their house and take them to a super center so they can get groceries, prescriptions, household items. Go ahead to the next one. And then this one represents the afternoon shopping routes. And you can see that they have boundaries. A couple of them will overlap. A lot of that has to do with the capacity of the vehicles that we use, how many people on the route might need a wheelchair lift, which ones are ambulatory. It takes a lot of schedule finagling sometimes to get them on the right route, to get them someplace where they can go, and also so that make sure that they're not having to be taken so far away from their house. And the way the senior shopping works is we pick them up at home, we take them to the shopping center, we let them have an hour to shop, and then we pick them back up and take them back home. And this is kind of run in coordination with, go ahead, the next one, to what we call the daily congregate meals. Now these run Monday through Friday. We pick the seniors up at their home and take them to a congregate meal site that's run by the Oklahoma County Senior Nutrition Program. They get to enjoy a meal. They play some games, have some socialization with people. A lot of times this is one of the only ways that they get to get out of the house. Many of them are homebound. They no longer drive. This provides them that hot meal and that time, and as you all know, that socialization aspect is extremely important as you get older. Some of these routes do run concurrently with the shopping route, so they will be taken to the meal site, enjoy their meal, be picked up, taken to go grocery shopping, and then taken back home. This is a breakdown of our ridership for last year. In total, we provided a little over 54,000 trips, individual trips. And as you can see, The vast majority of those are meals, about 40%. And like I said, some of those seniors, that is their only time to get out and enjoy the world and experience the world, so it's an extremely important thing. Go ahead. We partnered with area-wide, the Daily Living Center, and the Community Action Agency. Those are all organizations that we subcontract out this transportation to, because they have a vast, better system and more vehicles that we can use to operate this. Of the people that we surveyed, 97% of them rated these services as great or excellent. Here's some other things. It kind of illustrates the importance of these services. And when we were listening to the gentleman that was talking about the rider survey, I thought it was telling that, senior and disabled transportation is one of the most important aspects. And these support that, because our riders told us that they use these services, at least 97% of them use it at least 3 times per month, whether it's to go grocery shopping, go to their doctor's appointment, or dental. 44%, they use our services, our senior services, that is their way to get out of the house, over half of them. That is the only time that they get out of the house, because about half of them have no other access to either a church van, a family member, or friends that will come and pick them up. They do use our service, and they tend to stick with us. We had 57% of them that have been using the services for at least 4 years. And keep in mind, these are services that we've been offering for about 30 years, so we're very proud of that. And we have 99% of the users would recommend that to other people. I included this little note because we get these pretty much on a weekly basis, but the seniors, this is truly a service that they absolutely depend on for everything. This was a note we got from a little lady that we were trying to help, that she did drive, but she had some health problems and was unable to drive for an extended period of time, and so we would take her to her doctor's and physical therapy appointments, help her with the grocery shopping and stuff, and this is just, she says, thank you. The service you provided to me was second to none. The drivers were pros, friendly, and very good. So we're very, very proud of that. The other aspect of the special services area is our homeless and low-income programs. Now, these are funded through a partnership with the Planning Department and the Community Development Block Grant. We provide free bus passes and taxi rides to the homeless. This program we do a subcontract type thing. It's more of a partnership with all the local social service agencies, the nonprofit groups and stuff like that. Each year they apply to us for taxi funding and bus passes, and we try to allocate as much as that. We use every bit of the funding that we have to allocate those items back out to them so they can provide bus passes they use them a lot for the veterans, use them for their rehab, and they're getting them back into the employment. They'll give them a bus pass to help them go back and forth to work as they're getting reestablished. The YWCA uses this program extensively in their battered women's shelter to have taxi funding to send to pick up women and get them out of a dangerous situation and get them to the shelter. So this is an extremely important program. And last year, using these funds, we provided almost 60,000 individual rides to people across the metropolitan area. We also use these funds to supplement the Share a Fare program. That's the program where you can buy the coupon books for taxi rides at a 40% discount, and those are available to residents of Oklahoma City, Bethany, Nichols Hills, the Village, Del City, Midwest City, and more. Those are the participating, and the municipality absorbs the other portion of it. And that's all I have for you if anybody has any questions.
Are there any questions?
I don't even know where to begin. First, I know you're doing the Lord's work. I don't care which Lord or no Lord. You are serving people, and you need to be lifted up for what you're doing. Just know that you have support, I would imagine, from everyone on this board. Please keep doing it. As long as I'm here, you will have anything you need, the least amongst us, right? My mom's 72 now, and just had hip replacement surgery earlier this year. I've had to take off work to go help her move to get to places. Mm-hmm. This is real, and so I'm curious, what can we do to educate the seniors who don't know about this service, what can we do, what can I do as a trustee through social media, and what can we do as a board, and what can we do to let people throughout the metro who don't know that the service is there?
We actually do outreach events at, Becky and Valentina just got back from one at the Tinker Federal Credit Union in Midwest City, where we pass out flyers and information like that. The Area-Wide Aging Agency is our partner agency, and they fund most of these programs. They help us with outreach. We are also in the process of trying to, rebrand is the wrong word, but we are updating our flyers to make them a little bit easier to read, get the fonts bigger, and we're working with Michael and his staff to do some social media stuff. We're looking in ways we can get it into the city water bill newsletter and those type of things. We're also in the middle of a partnership thing with the Parks Department to discuss going out to the community centers and doing that type of thing.
I love that water bill idea, the community centers, the senior centers that we have. My only final thing, would it be possible, I know that this is the first time presenting this, I'd love to have a copy of this report.
Sure.
And I can't wait to have those reports going forward. This is just an invaluable service that we provide so that folk can age in place and with dignity.
Correct.
With dignity.
Yeah,
So thank you.
And maintain their independence. 'Cause
Absolutely.
That's an incredibly important thing. That is truly the goal of the area-wide and our staff, is to keep these people where they can age in place and not have to go into an assisted living center, because if those people are on state assistance, staying at home is we can serve more people if we keep them at home. If we have to put them in the institution, it gets exponentially more expensive to take care of them. So.
Again, thank you, and thanks to everyone who's come before me to put this in place. It's just wonderful.
All right. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, our next report is the long-range plan report. Larry.
Good morning. I took a lot of your time last time, so I'm going to be really brief, but I just have to kind of add a little bit to what Marilyn said. It is amazing what they do. And, you know, that's kind of a service that Embark is involved in really on behalf of the region, really. A lot of people in a lot of suburban communities enjoy the services that they manage. So that's great. And I remember some years ago there was something put in the water bill insert about the step ridership, about the STEP program, and sure enough, you know, a few months later and for the next year, ridership edged up. But, you know, and the partnerships, that's such a key thing of what we talked about in the long-range planning. Area-wide has been a partner for so many years, and really, they're the kind of partner that is essential to helping make that go. But hey, I got 5 planning highlights to kind of mention, and Jason has touched on one of them already. Really some teamwork that Chip and I were able to work on last spring helped us to get that competitive grant for the 6 new CNG buses, and that's exciting to be able to have something like that come our way in this region. It really helps us a lot to move towards that transition to a CNG fleet. September, we also received the draft of that Smart Growth America report on findings and recommendations about the transit-oriented development workshops that we reported on last time. We've sent those back with some comments. We hope to kind of get something back from them, hopefully later this month or early November. So we'll continue that conversation about transit-oriented development. Last month, Cotpa hosted the region's quarterly public transportation coordination meeting, something that really we've managed for about 10 years now, but every 3 months it rotates to a different transit provider, whether that's CART in Norman or CityLink or ACOG. ACOG is such a great partner. So that was a productive meeting as well. And, you know, this time I'd like to just mention that we want the public to understand about the Transportation Improvement Program. Basically, the federal money that we get, it's awarded to Cotpa, but yet we expend it for the benefit of the public. And the approval process takes it through ACOG, and we want the public to feel welcome to ask, how do you spend all those federal funds? So if there are any questions, we hope they'll come ask. Of the formula money that we get from the federal government each year, which is just a small part of our budget, a lot of it goes towards maintenance of buses, but some of it goes towards things like ADA programs and a number of other uses. So if the public wants to know, we're glad to help them understand. And then finally, in September, you as the board approved the release of a request for proposals for that benefit cost analysis for that Northwest Transit Corridor. And we're pleased to kind of say that we've had at least 3 vendors say that they want to propose on that. So hopefully we'll have a good set of competitive proposals to consider and bring back to you for final selection. So with that, trying to be briefer than last month, but if you have any questions, glad to answer.
Are there any questions for Larry? Thank you very much. Next report, the parking system report.
Good morning, everybody. Remodified the monthly parking report to represent the data that you're accustomed to. Did add a few bits of information as it relates to the transient parking and the event parking, and also to include the tenant lease space that we're responsible for. If there's any questions, gladly answer those questions about the parking report.
Are there any questions?
All right. Wanted to share with you some successes and that happened last month. We did implement the Sheridan locker adjustments to the equipment. There's a picture that I took. I realize I don't have the best photography skills of the equipment that we modified. Skip, could you go to the next? Here's another picture with the new equipment installed. That's for inbound traffic, as the picture shows what the equipment looks like with the inbound traffic. The next slide will show the exit traffic. The items that I identified with a red star, parking gates that were brought out of storage that were originally bought for the Broadway Kerr Garage that was sold. The blue square in the upper portion of the picture represents where an exit verifier was installed, and the yellow arrow is where the lion's share of our funds went to purchase a cash and credit card accepting device, pay and lane device. For the month prior to the implementation, we ran some reports, and the gates were set to auto-vend in order to get customers out of the garage at a quicker pace. During that hour and 15-minute time frame, Monday through Friday, when a vehicle pulled up to an exit gate, it would just open. Over a 10-minute period of time, over that 5-week period, we found that our peak exit count was 93 vehicles exiting over a 10-minute period of time. On September 12th, Monday, we started requiring access cards to leave the garage. By Friday, September 16th, 93 vehicles exited the garage with the access cards. Happy to say that we were able to continue providing that high standard of customer service while increasing our revenue control features. Software upgrades. A couple of months ago, the board approved us to implement software upgrades. Benefits of those upgrades will bring us to a virtual network, which will improve recovery capabilities in the future and improved implementation for future upgrades should they be necessary. We are also, when all is said and done, we will have moved the master server from the Santa Fe garage to the Arts District garage, as it has a backup generator to improve performance at the garages should a system lose power. Data reporting will improve, as we'll be able to export data off into the city network, which improves our retention. We will also have the capabilities of new reports, as a report package comes with the software along with the ability to create custom reports in the future. The software upgrade also includes credit card compliance software, as that's a moving target that changes quite frequently. Example, at the end of the year, Master credit card is changing their identifying numbers So that's a constant moving target. The week of the 17th is going to be a tough week. We will be implementing the software upgrades. During that week, we will have reduced reporting and reduced capabilities within the system. The monthly access cards will work as they do today. The users of the garage will not see any difference in that. The folks that I refer to as transient tickets or transient customers that take the paper tickets, they will see a difference in the system. The devices will still provide the customer with a parking ticket that's time-stamped, and then we'll have to manually calculate those fees and collect those payments with cashiers at the exit lanes, and then VIN the gate to let them out. We'll have reporting capabilities for all of that revenue and those transactions. However, it will not come from SCADATA. It'll come from manual controls and audits. An example, when a customer pays with a credit card, we're having to use iPhones to capture that revenue, and a software package called Square. Our revenue will be secured. We just won't have some of the fancier reports with an automated system like SCADATA. To go quickly, or attempt to go quickly through this, on Tuesday at 7 a.m., we'll start uploading new operating system software to our main server, disperse that upgrade down to the process PCs at each garage and then to the devices. That upgrade is going to take approximately 24 hours. The following day, we will upload the new SCADATA software, again to the head-end equipment and then down to the devices. Towards the end of the day, we'll do the hot fixes or the patches that we upload onto our computers often. And then Thursday, we will fine-tune, address any nuances, and begin testing the system for appropriate rates and functionalities before turning it over for full usage to the customers by Friday. Again, assuming all goes well. We're bringing some SCADATA employees, or a SCADATA software engineer in from New Jersey to assist us with this. Can I answer any questions about the software upgrade?
Any questions for Corey? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to our marketing, customer relation, and technology report. Michael?
Good morning. Just a few updates for you on some things that are coming up that are going on right now. We launched a downtown survey this week that is going to measure how people commute to the downtown area if you work downtown, and also measure and learn more about how people who live downtown commute and get around. This is just a part of the series of surveys we're doing to try to better understand our region and also the central hub, for which surrounds our transit center, and understanding those commute patterns. So I'm excited to report that to you later, and I think you'll find those interesting as well. So far, we've had 332 of those completed as of this morning. And it just went out Monday, and it will be continue to be circulated by many partners as well. As was mentioned earlier this morning, the rider survey kicks off later this month, October 24th. That week, we'll have folks on the bus handing out the surveys and helping our riders complete those surveys. And we also have, in response to, it was already in the works, but as part of the survey, you learned that people wanted more information at the bus stops. And we have been working on creating customized bus information panels that will go at each stop. We have a little over 1,300 stops, so there's a lot of files to be customized for each stop. But it will give them even more information on how to use the texting feature, where they are within the route, and about how much time usually that takes for the bus to arrive, as well as other information. and that will be provided in a bilingual format, as well as have some Braille components as well. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
First of all, to Jason. Jason, is the price to park at the Arts District garage less or greater or equal to the Walker and Sheridan garage?
For the normal transient parking, it's the same price. The monthly rates are different.
Yeah.
Monthly parkers.
And Corey, I'm sorry I didn't get my question out to you when you gave your report. I was still thinking about it. I'm wondering if there's some marketing or perception that we could do to let people know that it costs just the same to park at the Arts District garage. I'm wondering, since it's so new and it's so attractive, people just automatically think it's a much more expensive place to park at. And we could do something along those lines to help increase the occupancy of the garage.
I'll be glad to know that we have already started some online promotion of the parking garages and making sure also search rankings when people are looking for parking downtown, whether it's regarding Civic Center events and or things going on here at City Hall or in the area, that those search results come up first, as well as social media has been a focus of ours as well. And we're growing that audience where we hadn't done that in the past, and are working with partners to cross-promote and to raise awareness about those parking opportunities.
I think the other thing we've done just recently with all of our garages is you'll notice they all have signage right at the entrances that advertise public parking.
Yeah. I'm just thinking we may have done such a great job with the design of the Arts District that it's, people who don't know any better might just automatically assume it's an expensive place to park.
We have some improvements coming for the Sheridan Walker garage, so it'll look more expensive.
Good. Well, okay.
I know that wasn't your point.
No, but good to know.
Michael, I have a question on, you launched the Boeing rideshare program. Is this too early to make a report on that, or?
I don't have a report on that. We did, we worked with Chip. Chip actually launched that program and participated at several Boeing events. We helped develop all the branding materials as well as a wrap that would go on the vehicle so that we'll still build some brand awareness and recognition of the program. I think initial results appear to be very good. We're very pleased with the interest level, maybe even surprised.
Is this our first rideshare partnership, or?
Yes, that would be our first.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Michael on the marketing, customer relations, and technology? Okay. Thank you. Okay, our River Cruises and Spokies report.
Good morning. Well, our ridership continues to grow. Our year-to-date ridership on ferry is 29% over last year. It's 30% over 2014. Our charters are up 7%. So we're doing a lot to increase ridership while maintaining a very efficient ferry schedule. We're very happy about that. October is Haunt the River month. This is the month to get out on the scarily decorated boat. Lots of great design went into making that a great venue for Halloween parties. We are 80% sold through on that. Of the 6 evenings that were offered, 3 are completely sold out. So it's performing very well. We're happy about that. Spokies, the month of August was understandably low ridership since we were only in operation for 2 weeks of the month while we completely replaced all of the equipment and software for the entire system. We are getting some very positive feedback from riders, and we're seeing some increases as we have completed September. Recently, we've been reaching out to local businesses and organizations to try and promote Spokies as an advertising or sponsorship opportunity so that we can help grow and sustain the system. Staff is also actively involved in the bicycle and pedestrian planning that's been going on in the city, infrastructure planning, and we look forward to seeing some more bike lanes. This is not only good for making Oklahoma City streets safer for cars, pedestrians, and bicycles. It can also help promote the Spokies program, which also has health benefits and environmental benefits. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jeannie? Not, thank you. Is there a motion to receive our program reports? Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Items from the trustees. James. Okay. David.
Just to reiterate Kevin's request, we do have one of our new CNG buses out there. If trustees have a moment after the meeting, we'd love to be able to show you the bus. And I know we've talked a lot about the APTA awards, and we're grateful for that recognition, and just wanted to point out that we have them here. If you want to take a look at them on your way out at the conclusion of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we will move into executive session at this point. Thank you all.